Lives Inside is a brand new horror movie that just hit theaters last night. Let's talk a little bit about this one.
Well, sometimes that is better.
Distributed by Neon, a company that distributes most of the new Cronenberg movies, It Lives Inside is the feature directorial debut of Bishal Dutta, who made a short film with Matthew Lillard back in 2017 called Life in Color. That little detail is for all of my Scream fans out there. The film stars Megan Suri, Betty Gabriel from Get Out, and Gage Marsh. That last person, by the way, is basically a young Skeet Ulrich. The entire time I'm watching this movie, I'm like, wow, he's got the voice perfect, the look perfect. If they ever make a Scream remake, God forbid, he should play Billy Loomis. I'm just saying. But getting into a non-spoiler review of this film first, I think It Lives Inside has a tight script, great performances from its entire cast, but the one big issue with this movie is that it really lacks any and all scares. I think this is an incredible drama about finding identity and culture, but it never really feels the need or has a focus upon being a horror movie at its core. I mean, they advertise this as from the producer of Get Out, and then it's not really a horror movie. Truly, every other facet of this movie was incredible, but when your scares don't even rival The Nun 2 that just came out and hardly even got a peep out of its audience, that's a bit of an issue in my opinion. The entire time I was watching this film, I was thinking this is an excellent drama about culture, finding your identity, which we'll talk about a little more in the spoiler section of this video, but the scares themselves are lackluster and oftentimes cut before anything actually scary happens. I think back to The Boogeyman, this movie that just came out in 2023, you might have already forgotten about it, that's totally fair, it wasn't really much to write home about. But the one thing that movie had going for it is it had a couple of decent jump scares. This movie pretty much has the same setup to its style of like jump scares, scares in general, whatever, but they never follow through with it. Right before the monster's about to jump out of the closet, they cut to something else. You get all of the creepy buildup, but it doesn't really amount to anything. Now, even though I have that criticism about this film that unfortunately does weigh it down, the script is like fantastic if this was a drama about culture. It Lives Inside does a really good job at explaining how the main character of Sam, or Samita, is struggling with her own cultural identity, and she feels the need to Americanize herself, essentially. She calls herself Sam instead of Samita. She speaks English to her parents, and her mom is like a little upset about that because she can clearly see that her daughter is losing her identity. And I'll talk more about this in the spoiler section, but we have this sequence where one of her friends comes up to her and starts like recording her, and it's really bizarre, and it's the perfect example of how this is seen as acceptance when really it's alienating this person. I know some people have an issue with comparing one film to another, but It Lives Inside I feel like is very inspired or very akin to the Get Out that came out in 2017. I mean, it was all over the advertisements in the poster for this, so I don't feel like that weird comparing these two movies. Get Out uses its social commentary to enhance the horror and make its characters more relatable. It Lives Inside just has the relatability, and that's it. It hardly makes the concept much more horror endearing, and the film kind of forgets to be a horror movie at the end of the day. But like I said, is it a really well-executed drama? Yes. Horror fans may be disappointed, but there is definitely an audience for It Lives Inside. Nowhere near a bad film, in my opinion. All right, I'm about to spill the beans, so if you don't want any spoilers, not that there really is too many for this film, maybe skip this section of the video, go check out the movie for yourself, and then come on back. It Lives Inside is a slick commentary on culture and identity. It has some great performances, and surprisingly has a practical creature design at the end of this movie that really caught me off guard. I was expecting the Boogeyman levels of CGI where it's very like haphazard and just whatever, here's a quiet place monster at the end of the movie. No, they had a shockingly great creature right at the end of this film. That shot this way above the rating I was going to give it because of that one reason. Although the horror excels in the third act a little bit, the majority of this movie kind of forgets to be a horror or thriller film though. They try to set up scare sequences, but the problem is right before anything actually happens, they cut away to something else. I think Megan Suri does an incredible job portraying Samita. The social commentary is on point. I have no notes about it. Every single scene adds to the social commentary. The problem is most scenes don't add to the horror. When they try to set up a horror-themed sequence, it just feels very generic and lackluster, like not a lot of thought was actually put into that, opposed to the commentary that is so slick and super well written. There's this sequence in the movie where one of Samita's friends comes up to her and starts filming her and says, hey, can you say this and this in Hindi? And it's oddly alienating this person, putting her on a pedestal because of her cultural identity. That's bizarre, and it sucks that that's something that unfortunately really happens to people. You can see Samita super uncomfortable in the sequence where the other girl doesn't realize what she's even doing. Another thing I want to praise about the commentary is that it doesn't necessarily place blame or like has any like malicious attitude towards any of the groups of people we see represented here. Like the character of Samita, for instance, is trying to like Americanize herself and get away from her culture. She's embarrassed by it because of like outside forces. That's something she slowly realizes is wrong, because if you can't accept who you are, you're never going to be the best kind of version of yourself that you could possibly be. And I love that. This movie perfectly harps on that. It doesn't necessarily lay blame anywhere. It just says, hey, this is an issue. We all could work on it. It's a super effective and relevant message. I also want to praise the character of Russ, played by Gage Marsh, you know, basically Billy Loomis 2.0. I really like how they wrote this character because I was expecting douchey boyfriend and they kind of took it down a different direction, which was really surprising. Once again, any way that you can subvert my expectations, I'll take it, man. That's way more interesting than just going down the already beaten path. The problem with this movie is I just feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities to be this excellent horror film that comments on something that, well, doesn't really necessarily get commented on all too much. The ending of this film features an epic creature, which is so cool, and they kind of been building up to it. They've been teasing what this monster looks like in little shots here and there. They also play with creature mechanics, which is something I would love to praise as well about the movie. Like, so many films will have this demon and it's like attacking people and clawing through them, but the majority of the movie, it's just been invisible or living in a closet, bouncing through walls, teleporting. This movie explains its creature mechanics by actually showing you how it turns invisible. Like, it's a real monster running around attacking people, but people can't see it. This movie puts so much thought into its creature, but the problem is getting to that third act is just a bit of a slog sometimes because they forget to do scary stuff along the way. The third act, though, is phenomenal. Like, I really had a good time with it. They had a practical creature design that looks really gross and rivals some of the other creatures I've seen from movies this year. There is an excellent movie here if we would have just focused a little more on some of those scares or maybe kills earlier on. There's really only one death in this whole movie. And it is somewhat effective, but you hardly see it. Like, it's a really well done kill, and unfortunately you've seen it in most of the trailers already. But like, I wish there was more of that. That was so intense and so scary, but that's really the only moment. And like, parts of the third act I would say are also pretty good when it's just Samita versus the monster. That's cool. This movie, though, I think had the potential to be a 10 out of 10. The problem is they just didn't follow through. The big focus of this movie was its social commentary. And does it do that well? Absolutely. It's a 10 out of 10 in that regard. The problem is social commentary is one of the many tools in your horror tool belt that you can utilize to make your movie more relatable and aid to the horror. But this film doesn't necessarily do that. It just uses that one tool the whole time and doesn't really work with anything else that they got going for it. Like, they spent the money on making this crazy practical creature design, but you really only see it for like 4 or 5 minutes. That's okay, but you could have had some crazy scares to build up this monster and make it even scarier, even more evil than what it appeared to be at the ending. I really hope this doesn't come off as I hated this movie, but if this was an R-rated film, it's PG-13 unfortunately, this could have been a 10 out of 10. It feels very edited down. I feel like maybe there was a great horror film here, but they were like, it would make more money if it was PG-13. That is truly a shame in my opinion. If the scares and kill sequences were a little better, and like I said, maybe you leaned a little more into an R rating, this could have been something truly special. I'm always frustrated when I see a movie like this because I see so much potential, they just needed to take a little more steps. Or maybe it was cut down to make it a PG-13 movie. I give It Lives Inside a 6 out of 10, but a very strong 6 out of 10. A few more kills and setting up your creature a little better, and this could have been a 10 out of 10. Nearly there, but just not quite it. If this writer-director ends up making another horror film, I will be seated day one. I feel like this person is only going to be shooting upwards into the sky moving forward. I'm very excited to see what their next feature is going to be. Y'all should be on the lookout for the next Bishal Duda film. This person has a lot of potential, and I hope that they finally reach that in their next feature. What did you guys think about It Lives Inside, though? Leave me something about it in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching this brand new review. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more horror content in the future. Please consider supporting me on Patreon as well. The link for that is in the description of this video. And as always, don't forget to kill it out there, y'all.